All right, guys, what is up? We are back for our next installment of the Craftsman Kit Foundations building series. So when I say foundations, this is what you kind of really need to know to build a really awesome Craftsman kit. We're going to follow along with the instructions for this kit, which is the Yard Office number 3 from FOS Scale Models. But we're going to do a little bit different. So we're going to follow the instructions, and I'm going to show you a few techniques that are additional that aren't necessarily, maybe not in the instructions, but my own little twist on them to show you how we would do it. That way you walk away from this video series with the foundations of building a Craftsman kit. You can walk away building any Craftsman kit that you want. So the idea behind these short little videos is to break each step down into a doable step for everybody. That way you guys end up with an awesome kit when you're done. So we're going to do the wood walls next today in today's video. The next video we're going to do is these hydrocal walls. We're going to show you how we're working with these hydrocal walls to make them look like real brick. But before we do that, I want to mention that you guys should always subscribe and hit the notifications button, as well as give us a thumbs up on our videos. That way you guys can always see more as we post them more. So I'm just going to leave this here for a little bit of subliminal messaging. Now today, while we're painting our walls, we're going to use a sea sponge. There is a wide variety of sea sponges. I probably have a dozen of them. In fact, let me go grab some real quick and I'm going to show you the variations in them. So here's all my sea sponges. And as you can tell, each one has its own unique texture. Not one sea sponge is the same. I also have a couple sponges like this. They're pretty run-of-the-mill. As you can tell, I've used this one a couple times. They will give you a pretty similar pattern every time you use them. But what's really awesome about these sea sponges is that each time you use one of them, you're getting a unique pattern. Not one sponge is going to produce the same pattern when you paint with it as the next. So that is a really cool thing. So today we're going to use that sea sponge, just the one I chose. All right, so really this is a pretty simple step, and this is all we're going to cover today is painting the walls. So what I've done is I filled my palette here, my dirty palette, with a little bit of paint, and that looks like white, but it's a little bit off white. So what I'm using is Apple Barrel Antique Parchment, and I like to use the Antique Parchment. It's one of my favorite white colors to use because it is a little bit of an off white. As you can tell, it's not pure white. It is a off white color, so it ages it pretty quickly. And because we put this base coat of stain down mixed with a antique looking white paint, it'll produce a really cool effect. So let's get to work on painting our walls with the sponge. We're going to use the same technique we did with the windows and the trim pieces here. And we're just going to start and use a conservative amount of paint. We're not getting political here. We're going to use a conservative amount of paint in the beginning. So we're going to kind of blot it on here, dry sponge it onto our walls. And then if we need more, we can always add a little paint and then blot it on some more. So let's get started painting our walls. The real reason that I use a sea sponge like this for painting walls, especially on buildings that I want to show a little bit of aging to, but I don't want to weather really heavy, is that it creates a really cool chipped paint effect. So you'll see here when I'm working on it. And I did another video on painting with a sponge on your walls before, so it's not like it's a new concept. And you can go on thicker in places and make it look like it's completely painted, and I'll show you here in a second what that looks like. So here we go. There's a good example. I went pretty heavy over here in this corner with the paint, but then down here I left it look like it was peeling and chipped a little bit more. So it doesn't have to be a completely uniform. And the other really nice thing about using a sponge is when you use a brush, sometimes when you're brushing it on, it will fill in those crevices like in the siding texture, and you won't be left over with that detail showing through it. It'll just fill it in with white. It's a little harder to see until you go back over it with a stain or maybe some chalks, weathering chalks. So the paint kind of doesn't fill into those details quite as much, and it leaves it looking like a siding. So we're just going to do the rest of the walls real quick. This is a really fast way to paint as well. I love painting like this because I think it gives us the most texture, and I feel like it's one of the neatest ways to paint my walls. I like the effect that it gives, and I like how quickly it goes on. So pretty straightforward, guys. Nothing has to be perfect. And you don't want to be sloppy with it, but at the same time, be a little bit more random with it. Okay. And that is how we sponge paint our walls. So we're going to let these sit here and dry. Touch a couple spots up that I realize I want to fix real quick. And there we go. So I'm going to wash my sponge out next because I like to preserve my sponges. And the next video, like I said, we're going to be going over these hydrocal walls. So these are a whole different animal when it comes to painting and modeling for fine scale structures. The clapboard siding and the wooden wall pieces are way different than what you would run into when you have a cast hydrocal part. So what you'll see in these, I didn't open them yet. You have some windowsills. We're going to do those differently. We have a brick foundation or a block foundation down here, as well as your traditional brick walls. So there's a lot going on in these walls. We're going to cover everything. And you even see there's some like roof trim up the top. I don't know what you'd call that. Your cap stones, I guess. Something like that. But these are a whole different animal. There's a lot of detail in these hydrocal parts, and I am excited to do this in the next video. So as always, subscribe and hit that bell. That way when we post these videos, you'll see what's going on, as well as any other video we got going on. So enjoy your weekend, everyone. Have an awesome one. Now that was some sponge painting walls. Talk to you later.